better.
Okay, you tap back into the game.
Yeah, I tapped back into the game. And
Okay, I'll type go for you then. So get ready to go now.
okay. Let's go. So, hi everyone, and thank you for joining the HDN I'm Chfou and I'm gonna run a Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 1. And with me, it's Chfou who's gonna do the commentary with me.
Yeah. I also run, or at least ran this game at some point, and I'll be doing a New Game Plus of this later during the marathon. But for the time being, we've got 2 good hours of New Game without DLC, which is the most challenging run of this game, but probably the most fulfilling as well, because there isn't so much cheese involved.
There is still some.
I mean, yeah. In general with Neptunia speedruns, if you think it's a good thing to do in casual, you'll probably see it in the speedrun as well. That's just a general pattern of how things go. But yes, we'll be skipping every cutscene, as you might imagine. I mean, was there any doubt? So some quick menuing at the start, because rush attacks aren't useful until we have XE attacks. So remove the rush attacks to get more combo points, which you can use to set more powerful power attacks, which obviously do the most damage. They also inflict the most turn delay, but the turn delay is fine at this point. What's happened to the sound? Or is it fixed?
What?
I think it's something on Zfresh's end.
Yeah, it should be something on the first end. Mine is fine. Okay. Game is sound versus.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if they can actually hear us right now, but yeah, you're just fighting the enemies to get certain drops that will be needed to do some.
I have everything, so literally just had everything.
Yeah. You got really good luck on the drops there.
Yeah, not on the encounter though. Should be fine though. If the game sound may be a bit low because I made it a bit low.
Apparently everything's too low.
I know everything is at 50% on the game
yeah.
engine. And first boss of the game. And dead. I think I can change that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if
I mean,
I can change much.
I can change actually. Quite sound.
Yeah, the game has some weird mixing. So, like 50%. So you can just
bump up background music.
bump down sound effects and bump up the music a little bit, yeah.
There we go. Should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, that should at least help with it. either way, there's plenty of time in the estimate, plus we started early.
Yeah.
So you have to accept this quest, but you don't ever actually finish it. It's just a weird trigger to continue the plot in Rebirth 1. And it's tripped up quite a lot of people because it's a quest that isn't actually marked as compulsory in any way. It's just that it has the note for, or it just doesn't have the repeatable signal, and that's the only thing that makes it stand out at all. So I
Oh,
joined the
really?
party.
Almost. That's a great fight.
So repeated that fast, but again goes pretty quickly because it just has such a low guard break.
Also cancel the Neptune attack earlier to get it right behind if I have. So I can get the SP attack.
Yeah, you search for hidden items because the money is slightly tight early on. You don't want the SP charger to use, you want it to sell. But it was just the pigment, and the pigments don't really sell for anything, so that's too bad. That'll happen a while ago.
I'm actually gonna save
Yeah,
almost before every boss, cause if I die, I start to the last save. So I will start at the start of the game, the beginning.
Chapter 1 R4 isn't particularly hard normally, but she can just randomly kill
A bitch.
someone.
Yeah.
He won't be item searching for too much longer. It's only useful for the very start of the game. And maybe like 1 or 2 odd dungeons after that.
I'm
It's
still
also
doing
completely
it.
random.
Yeah.
So the route really has to work without getting any good things from it.
And try to not spam the item searcher then.
Oh yeah, and of course there was the unwinnable form of R4 first. Got a pretty bad R4 death there, it seemed like. But yes, you'll see a lot of R4 in this game, for better or worse. Usually for worse, because she ends up being a really boring character eventually.
Should be fine.
So in the no DLC run, Nef is the main DPS for the first half or so, or at least the first third. There isn't really much combo or IF can do, because combo has no skills at all that do damage, and IF's only skills are magic skill, which doesn't actually match his stats very well. Also earlier on, the healing grasses will do much more healing than the heal skill, but in the end the attacks worked out so that R4 was killed without a single death this time.
Yes. And I messed up a bit the opening.
I mean, in the end you just... doesn't actually matter as long as you hit the ship, it's pretty safe. So now, as you might guess, we're coming up to the most notorious boss in this entire game, and it's not very easy to win this fight just running straight in.
We're gonna have to
Even
farm
if
a
we
bit.
were, yeah, even if we were to get weaken enemies first, it's still a ridiculously hard fight with how high his stats are to this point in the game. So this will be one of the few times during this marathon that you'll see active grinding on the run.
Yeah.
Not that there's going to be a ton of it, but There will have to be a little bit. And it's not so much that you're trying to get levels, although you do get a few levels. The main reason to grind here is to get money so that you can afford life rings. And we'll be going through a pretty convoluted process in order to be able to get those life rings. Because the early dungeons you have access to just do not give very many credits at all. So these enemies are very slightly higher level than the characters right now. So they do take a few hits to take out, but nothing too obscene.
Oh, the buff shampoos can deal a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Just a bit earlier.
Most of the time you can kill them all before they move, but it's not guaranteed. And yeah.
If you mess up the symbol attack, they get to it first, and they can almost one-shot you. It happens to me just earlier when I was practicing.
Yeah, so he's trying to get free of the shampoo airdrop, which will unlock the next optional dungeon in the chain.
I actually got them.
Yeah. Picks up the plan for that dungeon, which was just sitting right next to the agi boosters. Also got lucky to get 3 agi boosters, which means more money. That's a random quantity in that chest between 1 and 3. And if you get 1, it can be a really, really bad thing. But 3 is the most you can get, so good luck there. This will end up being pretty low level, although we're not going to go out of our way to avoid experience. So we will gain quite a few levels just by grinding the money for the life rings. You enter Black Heart at about level 8 or 9, I think. Probably more like level 8.
I don't remember, actually.
So it's not necessarily going to be the lowest of low level runs, but that's along those lines anyway, just because most of the time it isn't worth going out of your way to get more levels, and there's no real way to lose experience in these games other than having characters deliberately die. Until V2, your characters that aren't even in the battle party get experience anyway. So, picked up the plan for weakened enemies on the overworld. Except a couple of quests that can be done at the next grind spot and head to the next grind spot after doing some shopping. This is before selling all the stuff like the SP charges and any clothing. Needs weapons for all the characters and also as many healing grafts as you can actually get once you've bought all the rest of the stuff. And slightly adjusting the combos at this point because there hasn't been a reason to menu since I have joined. Now there is. And despite the risks of putting everyone together in the formation that he did about 10 seconds ago, I suppose, it is still the best formation for getting characters to be able to attack in the first turn and positioning them better. So now begins the grind. Well, okay, it's kind of a double-faceted grind in the no DLC run. You're trying to both get 2 mysterious glowing objects so that you can implement weaken enemies plan, which I suppose you could call like easy mode, but is perfectly reasonable part of the game. So we do use it in every speedrun that it's available for. And also trying to get a little more money, which will get a tiny bit of from the monster drop. But
Are you kidding me? Ah, this is bad. It's actually really bad.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, so those birds can go viral.
Oh. Just cost me a lot.
And the healing item supply is not very high.
Yeah, I had to use a life fragment, otherwise I would have died.
Yeah, okay, well. That death is bad, but only really in terms of losing the life fragment,
Yes,
because
it's still manageable. It's pretty easy.
he resets the dungeon between every cycle of this grind anyway. It is very, very slightly faster to reset the dungeon between every cycle than it is to wait for the respawn. They both take about 25 seconds.
Yeah, but leaving the dungeon and re-entering fully heal my party. And
I mean, in that case, obviously you had to do it.
yeah, resurrects all my people. So.
You need the SP on IF for the most part.
Mm.
So the perforce drop in the serious flying object that allow weakened enemies, but he finished the quest and still didn't get a second mysterious flying object, so that's pretty bad luck. The drop rate is 40%, so getting only 1 in 5 is on the unlucky side of things. You pretty much expect to finish the quest and get the drops that you needed about the same time, but obviously it isn't guaranteed.
I got the other one.
So the grind here is done now, and it's time to move on to yet another dungeon. Now this dungeon is actually quite reasonably high level, but between weakened enemies and skill spam, you can defeat the monsters without getting in too much danger most of the time. So it's the second dungeon in the optional dungeon chain. Oh yeah, but before you actually go into that dungeon, you can hand in the quest from the perforce and save because it is slightly risky. Buying armor is just safety here. And also using up absolutely all the memory he has for the plan system right now, so this has to be the final grinding dungeon. But yeah, what he's trying to accomplish here is get free of either the gel feelers or the wolf furs from the enemies, or both, if that's doable. They're all random drops, of course, so it's not all that reliable, but you can kind of stockpile them because you have to come back here later anyway to get slightly more money later on in the game. So even if he gets, say, 5 gel feelers and 3 wolf fur, the 2 extra gel feelers will be useful later. The goal is just to get a stockpile of at least one of them. For now.
I got one of them. That's cool.
And then buy a single life ring. Thankfully the strategies do allow the fight to be won with only 1 life ring, which shortens grind considerably.
Can I get it?
And by this point he's somewhat closer to the intended level for Blackheart as well. But Blackheart is just such a big wall of a boss that
I have to farm a bit more. I need 1.5k credits.
Oh, okay. So it was a fight there, but close.
That's close.
Yeah, just needs to do one more set of drops. So either, I think like one more gel filler or...
I need one more jet filler to get the other quest.
Yeah.
Don't get it.
The wolves also go viral occasionally, so using cross combo to kill one rather than doing damage to both of them can be the difference between life or death sometimes.
I want as few as possible wolf to go viral.
Oh, that looks okay. But drop RNG is drop RNG, and it's just like any RPG in that regard.
I need a bit more.
And you can get no drops from a battle with 3 monsters. That's just how it goes sometimes. So yeah, level 9, which means that the farming was probably slightly unlucky overall. I mean, between having to do 7 per 4s and however many wolf and gel feeler battles this is going to be. I guess you could say that. Yeah, sometimes even a cross combo won't finish it off though. So now the first grind is finally complete. And Blackheart can be fought at this point with the money obtained to buy a single life ring.
Take
And the perhaps surprising recipient of the single life ring is Compa. And most sink some of the rest of the money into healing grasses. But yes, Compa will be the one with the highest health on Blackheart. And me putting it that way is very much the most important part of the battle. Compa having the highest health. See, one thing about Blackheart that trolls casual players quite often is her paralyzing characters, but Compa here is immune to paralysis. So that having Compa be the one who gets attacked the most eliminates the part of getting trolled by paralysis from the fight. And Blackheart is like other CPUs and enemies in these games. She targets the character with the highest HP pretty much exclusively. And so Compa acts as bait, pretty much. That being said, we have to get through this kind of joke boss first. He does take a while to kill in the no DLC run. He does have at least a decent amount of health, but you can see just how little damage he does to Compa at this point. So it's just a matter of spamming the combos, and then IF can use her SP here, but it's better to keep Neptune's SP for Blackheart herself. It just so happens that Blackheart is pretty much completely immune to IS SP skill. But that's it, it still was fast enough to take him out with only power attacks.
should have earlier.
Yeah, okay, so Blackheart will immediately go after Compa,
Huh?
provided she stays having
Oh.
most health.
Oh, bad. think I moved Compa too far away from Noir.
Yeah. So Neptune got paralyzed, but at this point you can just stall it out. Hopefully the stall strat will work. Oh, you can also heal it, I suppose, with an item. So now the Compa chase begins. Or by the time the string catches up, has already begun. Yeah. Conveniently, Blackheart continuously chasing after Compa allows IF and Neptune to also attack her from behind every turn, which boosts damage and accuracy. But you can't get too close to Compa because otherwise Blackheart is able to pull out Tricolor Order, which does AoE damage around her own body, which also does the most damage of any of her attacks. Plus hitting everyone means it's kind of painful. But for the most part, until Blackheart reaches low health herself, the fight is relatively safe. But once she is kind of below around a third or a quarter, she'll start randomly retargeting. And that's where you need to watch out. Even if she isn't normally going to one-shot anyone, considering that the levels are high enough, it can still be a danger if she does decide to throw out a Tricolor Order once she starts randomly retargeting. Another benefit of Compa having such high maximum health is that her first aid skill is actually more effective than Healing Grasp at this point. So yeah, so the random retargeting happened. IF is normally the first target once that does happen. But at this point, IF doesn't need the experience. So it's okay to just let this fight end. No one character getting experience is all that important at any point during the run. I suppose technically there's one section where you need Vert to get a certain amount of experience, but she's pretty much guaranteed to never die in that segment anyway. It's just every little bit of experience you lose will make certain fights later on in the run tougher. But IF's usefulness is starting to come to an end at this point, because we start to get the other CPUs able to join us. And this game is hard enough that we need to keep around the healer, for the most part. With only 3 party slots, the one that usually makes way for the CPU who's coming in is IF herself. Not to mention when she's in the back line, she can boost the experience that another character gets by a fairly substantial amount. I think it's 30%.
I don't remember about that. Should be around this.
Yeah, okay, so at this point, Noir actually joins the party, at least for the rest of this chapter, but the amount of time we can get away with only one life ring has come to an end, so with Noir's assistance it's time to do a little more grinding. The grinding fights will go by much faster with Noir available, but the amount of money that we need to raise is slightly higher as well. In that Noir needs to, well, we need to get a life ring for both Neptune and Noir to complement Compass one. So the money requirement is 10,000. You made a tiny bit of a start on that from the 2 boss battles, but boss battles at this point in the game don't drop many credits at all. So it really is just down to finishing these quests. So Noir has a weapon with a really big hitbox by default, which helps out a bunch with the grinding, because she can hit 3 enemies at the start of each fight most of the time. And then IF obviously can still clean up for the most part with Demonic Inferno, which leaves Net last to deal with any stragglers. So still looking for the same drops, Gel Feeler and Wolf Burst.
私の番ね。私のターン。ふふ、やったです。レベルが上がったです。
There's a viral, but luckily that wasn't a viral in the previous dungeon. I mean, in the previous visit to this dungeon. At this point, it wasn't too much of a threat, though it still did quite a lot of damage to IF.
奇襲成功。さて、どうしようかしら。で、やられたいのだ。次のターン。待ってね。私のターン。で、やられたいの誰？さて、どう？私のターン。次回も。油断しすぎよ。さて、どうしようかしら。私に任せなさい。言われました大将。これなら私一人で十分ね。で、やられたいのとしなさいさ。
He's much faster than the first visit in this dungeon. We
Yeah,
get a bit more levels and we got to Noir as well.
Bit more levels, Noir helping out, and also just better luck on the drops, I think, so far.
I think so, yes. Let me check. Oh yeah, I got 9 wolf furs.
Yeah, so
Right now I'm just...
another reason why it's important to do this grinding here is that you cannot buy life fragments in this game without implementing the recipe for them. And implementing the recipe for them in Rebirth 1 is ridiculously difficult to do in a speedrun. You have to get in way too many random drops to make it worth doing. And it just so happens that these grinding quests also reward life fragments.
I think the wolf fur rewards 3 life fragments. Which is really good.
So, this is really the point in the game where you get all of your stockpile of life fragments. There's a small amount of them available in chests later in the game.
There is angel wings, not life fragments. Basically the
I think
same.
it's like the odd life fragment and then exuberant fragments and angel wings, but really this is it in terms of getting all the life fragments you need. Also, an oddity for this particular game is that you never actually use you use like one eject button, if that. Yeah, I think you use one eject button in the no DLC run and 0 in the DLC run, which is somewhat unusual.
Oh. I also forgot to equip the armor stats test model.
Oh well. I mean, it didn't end up costing that much time in the end.
No.
Noir and IF didn't work for the most part.
2 life frames.
Yeah. Getting these free weapons for Neptune helped a little bit. Not a huge deal though. And 2 life
Should be
rings, like I
good.
said, for Neptune and Noir.
Should be fine.
さあ、どこからでもかかってきなさい。どうしようかしら。私の番ね。
So moving on to the next boss now.
決めさせても
Well,
らう。
okay, there are 2 bosses in this dungeon. One of them is just kind
決めさ
of
せてもらうわ。
tank, which you just whittle down really slowly, and the other one is actually difficult.
で、
This boss lizard just has a ton of health and not much else. He can also debuff your strength, which is another reason why he acts as a tank.
私の番ね。私の番ね。さあさあ。
Now, IF is meant to take out the 2 spiders with 2 demonic infernos, but I guess she got low damage rolls.
で、さて、
So
私の
Noir
番
just
ね
has to clean up a little
決め
bit.
させてもらう。さて、私。
Noir got poisoned by one of the spiders.
Should be able to level up. Ah no, she didn't. It's still fine.
So yeah, it's just a really slow and boring fight against this boss lizard. I mean, it doesn't take that long, but it feels like it takes longer than it should because it has strength debuffs. So yeah, you got level 12 after that boss lizard battle, which does help a little bit with level 12 on Neptune, which will help a little bit with the next boss because it has an elemental weakness to thunder or lightning, electricity, whatever you want to call it, and thunder edge is learned by Neptune at level 12.
That's why I grinded a bit more in the previous dungeon to get Neptune class to level 12, so she can level up from this encounter.
Yeah, this game is going to get really fun if anyone seriously tries to grind it for world record, because you'll be doing a few of the bosses at much lower level than this run is going to. So you won't have anything like Thunder Edge to rely on. But yeah, you pick up a Chfou strength booster to use later on. Characters are starting to have buff skills at this point. Like Neptune, I think, does have a skill which boosts strength, or at least is close to it. But the strength boosters work with a area of effect, and so they can be more useful. That's not being used in this particular battle. So yeah, this is again just another really slow fight, but unlike the boss lizard, this one can actually do some decent damage to you. And his targeting is fairly unpredictable. Plus he has AoE attacks that he can just pull out at any point, which do decent amounts of damage. So it can be a rather annoying boss at times. Not one of the most frequent bosses in the run, but pretty bad.
Forgot to heal. I'm gonna risk it.
And he's really spamming the AoE at this point.
It is, and it's really annoying. Should be fine.
Compa does have an AoE heal by now, but she has to get near one of the other characters to use it, which means that she'd just get attacked by him anyway. I mean, if he used AoE heal, he would just get two characters attacked after it anyway. And he does occasionally pull out that really strong attack. That just one-shot Compa about 10 seconds ago. Yeah, Flash Dog is not all too fun of a boss to fight. But it's over, and only one casualty. To be honest, Chapter 2 is where you're going to actually use most of your life fragments.
It is.
It is by far the hardest chapter in the game.
Chapter 2 and then Chapter 6 of 5 or 6. If I remember.
Chapter 6 is a really short one.
Then Chapter 7, actually.
Yeah.
CPU fights.
Yeah. The fake CPUs are Chapter 7, but they can be pretty difficult, yeah. So...
Forgot to save.
Yeah, this is a really shitty segment.
Huh. I also forgot to switch my team around.
Yeah, this team is fine, honestly. IF doesn't actually do that much on this fight.
I'm gonna still switch a bit.
I mean, yeah, you can put an IF to Compa, but she still doesn't do that much. This is basically let Noir carry you. So this sequence of bosses, you cannot save in between the bosses, and there's 3 of them in a row, so...
And I forgot to
is the
save
most
before,
fun.
so it's gonna be...
私のターンね
Yeah, that's...
Let's pray it goes well.
で
Should go well.
I mean, yeah, like, it's fine to burn basically all your resources to win these fights, so... It'll be okay, even if things do go semi-badly. You can see that Noir, with her massive weapon, is just cutting through the enemies, and the others are really just there.
Yeah, we can't save.
Yeah, for the most part, despite how the PC version of these Rebirth games can crash, it's a lot faster to run on it than it is to run on Vita. That applies to all the Rebirths and Sega Hardcores. Basically every Vita port is faster on PC, but so far the PS4 ports have been slower on PC. So you'll see Mega Dimension Neptunia coming up twice in the schedule. Both runs will be on
怪我
PS4,
の治療は任せるです
決めさせてもらうわ
but a lot of the other runs will be on PC for the games where it's available.
さてどうしようワクワク
So here is
さっさと
what is
終わらせ
basically the boss
患者
lizard
さんはどこで
to
すか
the next boss. Like,
私の番ね
this boss is not all that threatening. It can pull out a rather high damage move when it's at low health, but
相手は誰
overall its damage is still pretty low. It does have extraordinarily high physical defense though, so that it's worth it to put elemental attacks even on Noir. Now Noir has this magical thing that
患者さんは
players
ど
love
こ
called
です
Ignore Category,
私のターンね
which allows her to
患者さん
bypass
はどこ
robots
ですか
effect where they halve your physical damage
怪我
normally.
の治療は
But
任
even
せる
still,
です
it's still worth it to put magic attacks on Noir for this one battle.
ワクワク
Most of the time Noir just uses physical no
私
matter
の
what.
番ね
私のターンね
But yeah, this guy, this robot, while it does do decent damage, is nothing compared to the next
私の
one.
番ね
So it's really just Boss Lizard Part 2.
怪我の治療は
決めさせてもらう
私のねね
With the occasional strong move being pulled out.
I think I should
And
get... should I get Noir... Neptune the non-elemental attack as well for the rest?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Like, if I'm switching Thunder Edge for Power Slash or not. For Neptune.
I don't think you need to do that.
No.
Yeah, I think you should do that. But it doesn't really matter that much. Noir is the main damage dealer on the next boss anyway. As usual.
Yep. Let's go.
Okay, so this is the reason this gauntlet is actually hard. The Killer Sheen boss. But thankfully Noir did just get a level 1 EXE finisher. So she can do slightly more damage once the EXE gauge is built up. With her only having a level 2 at this point, she was not really doing any EXE finishes.
このブラックハートが直々に相手をしてあげるわ
Let's go.
で死にたいのは誰なの
So the Killer Sheen hits super hard, has, well, at least slightly more health and defenses than the previous boss. But it's mainly about how hard it
治療
hits.
は任せるです
決めさ
And
せ
the
てもら
fact that you
う
haven't had a save in about 10 minutes at this point.
怪我の治療
相手は誰
ワクワク
やっと私
患者さんはどこ
私の番ね
So the goal is really to have it attacking anyone but Compa, because Compa's defenses are paper. And if your healer suddenly dies, then there's not a lot you can do.
死にたいのは誰
So just having anyone apart from Compa having the highest health is generally the best idea.
ワクワク
I mean, sometimes Compa's going to take hits no matter what,
で
but
死にたい相手は誰
if she has the highest HP too often, then she can just randomly die.
私の
And
番
then
ね
you're actually in trouble.
患者 者さんはどこですか？
Try
決
it.
めさせてもらうわ。
So, yeah, I mean, he will randomly retarget at low health anyway, so
私の番ね。
the strategy of having another character at high health only works for so long.
私の番ね。
患者さん。
私の番ね。決めさせても。私の番ね。ね。
But
知りた
yeah,
いのは誰？
Rebirth 1 and the games that use this engine feature a lot of bosses where you want to manipulate your health
Huh.
so the benefit is highest.
Gonna be bad.
ね。死にたいのは誰なの？
Oh, I see, you skipped off the turn that time. Yeah, he's gone under health and he's gone under half and he's one of the bosses that retargets once he goes under half instead of under
やっと私の番ね。
a third or a quarter or whatever.
私の番ね。
And it seems like his retarget has been to solely focus on Neptune,
死にたい。
which isn't all that bad right now because it lets Noir attack from behind continuously, but it still burned quite a few life fragments so far.
やっと私の番。
And he does have an attack that can one-shot Neptune from almost any health.
私の番ね。私の番ね。
怪我の治療は任せるです。
私の番ね。
怪我の治療。
And Compa's SP can also actually run out on this
死に
fight.
たいのは誰なの？
まだお嫁にだって
As
言
you
って
saw
ない
there
で
with the SP
す。
charger being pulled out.
相手は誰？
私、まだお嫁に。
ね。死にたいのは
患者さんはどこですか？
Uh-huh.
決めさせてもらうわ。私の番ね。
私、まだお嫁。
決めさせてもらうわ。
And yeah, Killasheen will attack the character that just died quite a lot.
私の番ね。
That's just his thing.
ね。相手
Just
は誰？
pushing it.
Got
よし。
Ah, nice. Got
Yeah.
it. It's just trying to push it.
Yeah, I might just abandon Compa at this point.
Yes. I did.
That's
Rip comp.
yeah. Okay, so Killasheen is down, and that's
Ah, fuck. I hope I'm not missing something.
no,
no.
it looks fine.
Yeah, because
I mean,
now it's just unequip the life ring from Noir, and I still have time to. That's good. That's good.
yeah.
And now to Linbox. Chapter 3.
Yeah, one of the easier chapters. Got a little, well, the last section of grinding is during this chapter though.
The start is really annoying. Though.
Yeah. This boss fight, or sort of boss fight coming up is not hard in any way, but it stalls and stalls and stalls and stalls.
It is really annoying. It took. I think I messed up the party and I only got Neptune and Compa. It took me like 5 minutes to get it.
Yeah, there are these angel enemies, there are two of them in the battle, and they both have heal skills, and those skills can heal most of their health, so you have to somehow get to a position where you can actually one-shot them, or at least do more than their heal, in order to be doing real damage to them. First a little bit of a shot.
No, I'm missing.
Oh, you miss? What do you miss exactly?
No, it's fine.
Okay, yeah. Be good.
Should be fine. I
And Neptune has learned a more powerful power
Negative
combo.
drive.
So this boss fight is just 4 normal enemies with seriously inflated health pools. They have normal enemy size stats and normal enemy size guard break bars as well, which means that they get guard broken pretty much immediately. But the healing is still annoying despite getting the guard break.
Hmm. Ah, nice. Already got takedown.
A good start, and yeah.
Really good start.
でやられたいの誰？
私の番ね。今日ね。
ワクワク。私の番ね。
私の番ね。次。
No, yeah, despite this being a scrub battle fight, you have to buff Neptune so that we can deal with the healing that was described before.
余裕。
And ISSP bar is still really small, so after one Demonico photo and one
Take boost, you...
text, she's out.
She's out of SP. That's...
And you can see the light bulb just continuously healing itself for most of its health bar, but once it's guard broken and once Neptune actually hits and attacks, she does way more than its actual health.
That's the important part of this fight. If you actually have to make Neptune hit his attacks, or attacks, I mean.
But now, of course, Neptune will get poisoned temporarily. And this is, apart from the branching storylines in V2, this is one of the very few times that Neptune actually leaves the party in a Neptunia game. At least once she's joined, in the case of the Rebirth 2 and Mark 2.
At least you get to see the best girl, which is rare.
The Avert is actually one of the better goddesses in terms of battling in this game. She does eventually get relegated out of the party, but it's more based on her not getting the same gear that the others do, more so than her being bad.
Oh.
Because her EXE drive spiral rate is actually the best EXE drive for the speedrun. Or at least pretty much equal to Infinite Slash on Yuan.
いいものを見つけましたわ。
So yeah, we'll be making use of IS trait that was described earlier. She'll be going behind Vert and boosting Vert's XP gain, because Vert comes to you, joins the party one level below learning her XE drive. And thankfully this dungeon happens to contain some EXP sponge enemies, called the Metal Dogu. In this game they aren't very metal in their appearance, but they still give a ton of experience, so just have to kill about 5 or 6 of them. I think it's 6. to be able to.
I think it's 6, yes.
Well, six of them provided you have IF behind Vert, and then Vert can learn her XC drive move. And at the same time, you also build up your XC Gorge so that you can actually use that XC drive on the boss coming up. So this grind works two ways. You do this grind even in the DLC run, in fact. The thing about the metal dogus in this game is that while they have really low offensive stats, they have really high dodging stats. So you see Celeste Spear just miss a ton. Thankfully, any miss really just opens the opportunity to build the XC Gorge more, so you don't actually lose that much time to missing your Celeste Spears. And Compa and IF also gain a few levels at this point as well, just because they're there, even though they don't have the XP boost that Vert does. Now I would say you were getting unlucky on the numbers of metal dogus, but you did get 4 and 1-5, so it looks like it's okay.
It's 6, yes. I got the level up.
And did you put IF back in the party?
Yes, I actually have to not forget that.
And IF doesn't really fill any role in this fight other than being bait.
It's a bait. The group.
In fact, both IF and Compa are really just bait on the next boss battle. But you do need bait because he does hit reasonably hard. For the hopefully limited amount of time that he's actually alive anyway. Well, Vert's a bit of a one-trick pony now. The way to go here is just boost your own intelligence and then spam XC drives.
I don't have that. How? Oh no. I was looking at my XC drive, not his skills.
Yeah, I see, never mind, yeah. So you can see, you saw briefly while he was showing Spiral Break for about 10 seconds there that it debuffs both tech and luck, and it just so happens that those are the stats that pick your crit rate in this game. Like, it's your tech and luck against the enemy's tech and luck. So when you debuff its tech and luck, it suddenly gets crit all the time. And Vert already has a lot of tech and luck herself. So really Vert is just a crit machine. It's even better when you compare her with someone like Noir, because Noir can lower the defenses. But Vert is still really good on her own. Neptune's back, so we're going to say goodbye to IF again, with 4 characters in the party. Of course, Vert doesn't actually leave too often anymore. She does leave the party a couple of times, but for the most part she's meant to be a permanent fixture, unlike Noir. So IF is really mostly done at this point. She'll come back in certain places, but she's not the first choice party member, we'll put it that way.
Need 12k. But before the plot progresses, those metal dogus are a little too tempting to ignore at this point. In terms of the XP and credits they give, gotta do a tiny bit more grinding before moving on. This is also the one time in the whole run that you're going to see an eject button used. Once he's done with this grind. Every other grind before this, there just weren't enough, or there just weren't eject runs available, and this is the final grind in the speedrun.
私のターンですわ。チェックメイトです。さて
As usual, so that spear misses at least one naval dojo each fight. You can't ever have a fight where it just instantly kills everything. That would be too easy.
先手はいただきましたわ。次はどなたかしら。さて何をいた
But the cleanup job here has been pretty good.
私のターンですわ。
And really just looking at the number of credits that
レベルアップ
are
よ
in the inventory to determine when to leave here. It's not a strict amount, but
I'm doing like one run.
25k.
I'm mostly doing run of Metal Dogo and then leave.
Yeah. In general, you will just kill the 4 metal dogus that you can run into. So with that slight extra grind, you can set up, well, you can get Neptune to a not totally terrible level. Conta comes back into the front lines and life rings go back on character, at least on Neptune. You can equip a life ring to Vert for these next bosses, but in general it is not a bad idea to keep it off, because this is another boss that targets the highest HP, and so having Vert not having the highest HP can be favourable. And the life rings allow Neptune and Compa to have higher health than Vert most of the time.
いいものを見つけましたわ。
Vert will eventually take one of the life rings, but not yet.
What 何かしらこれ。
Next to fight in a row. 2 boss fights in a row.
Yeah.
引くわけにはいきませんわ。
貴様に決めた。
さて何をいたしましょうか。
We got 2 actual boss fights and an unwinnable one stuck between them, which does have the helpful effect of full healing every character
何をいたしましょ
because
う
of the death.
患者さんはどこ。
貴様に私の番
やっと私。患者さんは。
If you leave the characters too close together, then R4 will hit AoE
貴様に
at some kind of range most of the time,
決めさせてもらう。
so gotta spread out.
あつわつ。
That said, you also want Vert to be
私のター
behind
ン
her,
で
so
すわ。
that just works out well in general.
貴様に決
患者さんはどこですか。さて
Now,
あ
私の番
you are stuck with 3-hit rush attacks right now, so the XE Gorge doesn't
怪
fill
我の
that
治療は任せるです。
but
死人
later on we'll change
私の
that
番
怪我の
in a
治療。
couple of different ways.
さて
認めない認めるものか私が
レベ
This first fight you also kind of want to not leave on completely empty resources because the XE drive gauge you build up does carry over to the second boss.
どこですか。
Oh yeah.
You do have a bit,
私の番
but you're not completely empty, but
復活アイテム。
it's not
希望が。
going to be the end of the world. In between there's the unwinnable fight, which is probably already over on the stream, but this is actually the hardest boss, or the highest stat unwinnable fight in the entire game. It has over 800,000 health, which is pretty ridiculous for a storyline Neptune boss, even if it is meant to be unwinnable. But yeah, that was quick and gone.
油断はしない本気で行くわ
Now we have the second phase of
全部整ってい
R4,
ますわ
the second winnable phase. She does, in theory, have slightly higher stats, but
覚悟はよ
of
ろし
course
いかし
you
ら
get to have Vert in Hard Drive Divinity
患
form,
者さんはどこで
So really it's not all that bad at all.
これ以上
患者さん
Just ends up being about the same
貴様に
difficulty,
相
if
手は
anything.
誰準備は整っ
怪我の治療は任せるです
貴様に私の番だ
And
怪
as
我の治療
usual,
は任せるです
keep the not having the highest health, have one of Neptune or combat tanks. They do take quite a lot of damage at this point, but your heals are also starting to heal quite a lot,
私の番だ貴様に
so
そう思
things
った
aren't too
私の番だ
terrible to deal with, even if
覚悟をよ
things go somewhat badly.
Almost had an arch attack. She attacked Vert that had less than 2k HP and missed. So
That's a nice.
I got lucky like
Yeah.
for this fight.
That's a pretty good fight though. Like, Copper does not need experience at this point in the game. She never really did, honestly. Like, you don't want her to die in every single boss battle, but her losing experience from any one boss does not matter.
She's mostly here for the heals.
Heals, which are based on the health of the character she's healing,
Yeah.
instead of her own. So now chapter 4, which turns back up the difficulty a little bit. Not to say that chapter 3 was a little easy, but none of the bosses are anywhere near the level of, say, chapter 2. Even if the damage numbers looked a little scary at times. First up is shopping, which is partly why the money grind happened earlier. Things are getting a little expensive at this point, if you don't do any money grinding. Trade pass just gives you a tiny bit extra money. And thankfully Vert comes along for the ride to Louis, otherwise things could get a bit hairy. Of course, before you actually get to meet the CPU here, there's a sudden difficulty spike boss. Not so much in the damage he does or his stats, but he just has a ridiculous amount of health at this point in the game. Thankfully, that exposes the boss's weakness to some degree, which makes the fight actually take a reasonable amount of time and not a very long time.
女の子には優しくしないとダメですよ
覚悟はよろしいかしら
ワクワク
相手は誰これ以上好きにはさ相手は誰
Yeah, here's the Ancient Dragon, complete with puns on the Pokemon Bruno Elite Four member, which we completely missed because they skipped him
私の
about
番だ
half a
覚
second.
悟はよろしい
But
か
they're
しら
there, I swear they are.
ワクワク
相手
But
は
yeah,
誰
Ancient Dragon, well, does a decent amount of damage,
怪
nothing
我
too
の
big,
治療は
相手は
but
誰
enough so that you want to have the life ring on Vert because you just
これ以
do
上好きにはさせ
to
ません
keep things safe.
相手は誰
怪我の
Also,
治
you
療
want to
は
build up the EXP Gorge to more than one at a time so that you can keep using EX finishers after
ワクワク
you've used an EXE drive.
私の番だ
But yeah, he can occasionally do stuff like that.
覚悟はよろしいか
Kills
しら
combo.
怪我の治療は任せるです
相手は誰
But he will just go for
怪我の治
highest
療は
health
任せるで
as
す
well, at least to begin
覚悟
with.
はよろしいかしら
So
決めさせてもらうわ
there's a little bit of manipulation you could do on him, I suppose.
覚悟はよろしいか
患者さんはどこですか
私の番ね
患者さんはどこで
覚悟はよろしい
Either
決
way,
めさせて
the
もらうわ
main plan is still just to
患
keep
者さ
him
んは
off
ど
the
こで
覚悟はよろしいかしら
患者さんはどこですか
私の番ね
almost good at this point. But
怪我の治療
準備は整っています
や
just need one more XC drive, hopefully. All good, yeah. So he's really an HP sponge. Obviously he did quite a bit to Compa, but like we said before, Compa's defenses are kind of toilet paper tier. You can poison him, that is correct. He is like one of the only bosses in the whole game that can be poisoned. And Vert's EX finishes are actually set up so that you use Venom Storm on him to give you that chance, but I guess apart from setting Compa's breaks, you don't really have any other way to poison him. And you really want Compa to use a heal every turn, which means that you don't have any great chance to get a reliable poison. Now the best CPU in this particular game joins.
No, that's not.
Well, actually, they're all kind of good. Like, every CPU in this engine has some kind of benefit to using them. But Blanc has quite a few. She's the most tanky CPU by far. Like, the most tanky character in the game by far. Because she has the highest defenses, both defenses, and she also has the skills that make her take even less damage from attacks on both sides as well. Not only that, when she uses her EXE drive, it inflicts turn delay on the enemy. And the final nail in the coffin of the other CPUs, at least for this game, is that when Blanc joins, she has a rush attack that does 8 hits.
Yes.
Whereas the others don't get that kind of attack for a very long time.
And she's also level 34 and that in like is 22.
Yeah,
これ以上
level
これ comparison.
させませんわ決めさせてもらうわ
I mean, Vert is still a better damage dealer despite Blanc's level advantage.
決めさせてもらう
And for now, it's just a team of 3 CPUs.
準備は整っています決めさせてもらう
Eventually, Noir will replace Vert's damage dealer, but that's only really because of her much higher level.
これ
In
以
the
上
end, Vert and Noir are about equally effective at dealing
私で
damage.
終わりにし
覚悟はよ
It just so happens that Noir has got the massive level gap in her favour. But you can see that he built up EXE to level 2 really, really quickly. And also, Blanc just takes all the hits like a pro, and that is a completely free boss. And in fact, there will be 2 more bosses coming up which are pretty much just like it, with the only real threat being paralysis. But then after these 2 next bosses, which are fairly free, there is perhaps the hardest fight in the game outside of Chapter 2.
Ah. Yes. It's
I'm not sure if it's the hardest overall, but it's definitely the hardest outside
Uh,
of Chapter 2.
I would say the most random in terms of outcomes.
Yeah.
You can go
Yeah.
surprisingly really smoothly or really terrible.
But yeah. First we'll deal with the 2 robots here though. They can, like I said, they can paralyze Blanc, and then you're not getting your XE drive
い
and
いものを見つけましたが
you can't defend either, so she takes more damage. So, I mean, this can be a
Risk.
vague threat.
I always forgot the event trigger isn't as wide as the room.
Yeah. And that is one of the very few life fragments you can actually get. from a chest, but it happens to be in the way, so why not? Okay, so hopefully the robots don't
あな
paralyze
たのような
Blanc.
輩
That
生
is,
かしておくわ
like
け
I
に
said,
は
really
参
the
りま
only
せ
thing
ん
that can go wrong
これ
here.
以上好きにはさせません
Apart from maybe a random target swap at low health.
いつでもいけるぜ覚悟はよろしいかしら決めさせてもらうわ
Yeah, we do fight them one at a time. It is two
準
separate
備は
battles.
整っていますわ相手は誰私でお準備は
And
整っ
Vert does begin with the highest health because Blanc doesn't have a life ring and won't ever get one.
これ以
Doesn't
上
need
好
one,
きに
I
はさ
don't
せま
think.
せんわ
She doesn't need one.
私
She
の
has
番
the highest health overall.
準備は整っていつでも
Yeah.
決め
And
させても
now that Vert isn't the
準
highest
備は
health,
整っ私の
you'll
番
just see Blanc getting targeted all the time unless once Neptune takes a single hit. And EXE goes up really fast.
Really
One
fast.
EXE to the back. And oh, just missed the damage range, oh well. You do get to carry over that EXE.
私の全身全霊を持って
Mages joins
お相
but
手し
isn't
て
as
差し上げ
useful
ま
as
す
CPU.
これ以上好きにはさせません
Not the worst
いつでもいけるぜ
character.
覚悟はよろしいかし
She can at least join the back though, but that's about it.
私の番に
She does get some
覚
use
悟はよろしい
in
かしら決めさせてもらいつでも
the upcoming parts,
こ
but
れ以
only
上好き
really
には相手は誰
because other characters leave.
私で終わりにしこれ以上好
Yeah, and defense support just makes Blanc's tanking even more broken. It's really more of a safety strat than anything. That said, at this point you already have 2 or 3 EXEs, so Blanc can afford to waste a turn on it. And that one did die in 2 EXEs. This one, okay, so this upcoming boss, I think people know what it is. Or it's another notorious boss for casuals. It's the Jammers fight. The only actual difficult Jammers fight in any of the games. Because the Rebirth free victory version really isn't all that difficult in comparison to this. It is tricky enough that it actually prompts you to buy some healing items which are stronger than healing grass. And set up the party a certain way. So this menu will just be a decent amount of maintenance. But it's setting up for this very unpredictable boss fight. So you'll see that Vert is no longer in the front line because the characters are going to take a lot of damage before they're able to be healed at all. And if Vert dies, then there's no real fast way to finish this fight. So she has to take a bit of a backseat until the fight is ready for her to enter. So yeah, first up, before entering the boss battle, this is the one time in the run where it's actually worth it to build up EXE Gorge on a random encounter before the boss battle begins. This probably ended up being slightly more EXE drive than you would normally get, but these enemies do pretty much no damage anyway, so it's only really a tiny bit of time loss. And instead of any threat. You would only share grind in this game for Turan.
覚悟はできて
Shares
るか
do buff the stats of their country CPUs by a little bit,
やられたいの誰
but it's pretty, well, it's not all that much without having something like Netgear's leader skill from Rebirth 3 or having 100% shares. Okay, so the Gemma's fight
で
itself,
もいけるぜ
you need to take out the skill Gemma pod, unlike casual playthroughs where you'd normally take out the item Gemma pod. This is because both the item Gemma pod and the self-defense system are weak to Vert Spiral Break. So you have to rush down the skill Gemma pod with your melee attackers and then swap and Vert to deal the killing blow to the rest.
私の番ね
Of course, you only have combos to take out the pod and it actually has a decent amount of health.
でやられたいの私がいなくても
But
しっかりや
it's
るのよ
not all that easy to do.
あとはこれ以上好きにはさせませんわ
Also, if IF dies,
とどめは誰
いつでもいけるぜ
it's a problem because you need IF alive so you can swap her out to Vert.
美しき勝利
Despite some low health bars, it looks like everything went fine.
Yes, it went. It was close one. I thought IF would died. Would have died, but no.
That's a pretty low roll. That's a low roll on the self-defense system with the EXE, but you had so much EXE that you're able to just use another one on it.
オペレーションジハードを開始す
But
る
yeah, without proper strategy, or without knowing how to do it, that boss is really difficult.
私の番ね
There'll be plenty of share grinding later on in the marathon between Conquest ending and the Rebirth 2 run, the Vanilla
オペレーシ
Neptune
ョン
run,
ジハードを開始する
so don't wait up for
私の
that.
番ね私の番
Share grinding is a thing. Unfortunately, the one character you actually want to be kind of useful in this battle got paralyzed.
私の番ダメ
That said, Mages is kind of a decent substitute in terms of using AoE attacks, but really you want IFs to use her EXE drive, which is AoE as well.
And she got paralyzed, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, these enemies deal a lot of damage, but their health is relatively low. And thankfully any EXE drive that you build up in that battle gets to get carried over to the next boss. Which is a bit of a rarity in terms of having a battle and then going into a separate dungeon from the previous one and still carrying over EXE Gorge. That normally doesn't happen.
I think
Later
it's
on
still the
there'll
same
be...
dungeon actually.
Yeah, you have the same gauge. No, this is a different dungeon.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's obviously the same, like, textures, but it is a different dungeon. Later on, you'll be doing some boss fights in cities, like multiple boss fights in a row, and you don't carry over the gauge between those fights at all, because it's like counted as different dungeons. But this is the one exception where you manage to carry over EXE gauge between dungeons. In any case, we get the two really good CPU back, because Neptune is just so underleveled at this point. Vert and Blanca are a lot
油断
better.
はしない本気で行くわ
Neptune does eventually become the highest damage dealer, but it takes quite a long
決
time.
めさせてもらうわ
In fact, it's pretty much only in the final chapter.
覚悟はよろしい
いつでもいけるぜ
決めさせても準備は整っています
Fake White Heart here usually isn't a huge deal,
私の番
but she can hit everyone apart
覚
from
悟は
Blanc
よ
pretty
ろし
hard,
いか
and she does decent damage even to Blanc.
でもき
私の番ね準備は整っています
You're not normally going to see Blanc get hit for 800
私の番準備は整
by
っていま
just a basic attack.
私が並べるなんて
And her defenses as a White Heart are decent as well. Nothing amazing though. And that's that. Lon and Vert actually make a really good combo. If it weren't for the level difference, then I think you might be keeping Vert around instead of putting in Noir, but as it is. we'll be saying goodbye to it from the party after this chapter.
PlayStation.
Yep, time to return to
Last station.
that station.
Need to get
After
Noir
you-
back.
Yeah. Thankfully she doesn't rejoin with all, well, I think she keeps the gear, but she keeps the gear that she had, so you have to buy her new gear straight away. But thankfully she gets the big level boost. So buy 2 of the armor and 1 of the Noir weapon. Neptune will get another story weapon upgrade during this chapter, so she doesn't need a new one otherwise. But Noir hasn't been around since rush attacks weren't useful, so her combos need to be changed a tiny bit. And there's no need to upgrade Blanc's armor just yet. It's good enough as it is.
I forgot a life ring. I fix that
Right.
after the cutscene.
Also, thankfully this game hands you the Super EXE drive on a silver platter, which allows you to build up EXE twice as fast as you otherwise would, and that makes the late game boss fights actually manageable for the most part. Because you can get a full gauge of EXE in pretty much one character's turn, at least if it's long. And then the others once they get their 8 hits. But yeah, it's a pretty busted plan. But Compa's use, or IF and Compa are pretty much done until chapter 7 now. So Noir gets to steal their equipment. At this point, pretty much all the going out of the way for things is over. Any chests you pick up are just idle mashing of the A button at this point.
Mm.
I mean, there might be a couple of revival items on the way at some point that I forgot about, but other than
No, there is no... It's just me getting those because they are close to me. Just that.
yeah, it also doesn't waste any
どこからでもか
time
けてき
to
なさい
grab items that are in your direct path. Provided you don't go too early or too late and have your characters swing their sword or whatever.
余計な指図は必要さっさと終わらせましょう
Those enemies can viral, which is the only way they don't die to one infinite slash. But they didn't viral, so easy kills. And now is another boss gauntlet, and another unwinnable boss. Like, we haven't had enough of those already. I think this is the second to last one though.
Yes, should be. This one and the next R4 fight.
Yeah, As people have pointed it out in chat, this game has by far the most unwinnable boss fights of any NEP game.
I have no idea why
な
they
かな
did
か強
that.
そうな相手じゃない。
But from now on, the boss fights get pretty standard in terms of strategy. Even well, they were pretty similar since you got Vert, really. But now that we have pretty much the final team, or the final ideal team,
ねっぷねぷ
it
に
will
して
get
や
split
る
up
私のターン
in Chapter 7,
こ
of
の状
course.
況でゆっ
But now that the team is close to finalized, the fights will start to become pretty
よ
repetitive.
しこの状況で私のタ
So Noir has the best EXE
ーン待ってました
available right now due to her higher level.
私の番ね
Lon is still as ridiculous a tank as ever,
レベル
although that was a decent hit on her by the Panther. And
Neptune died.
the EXE doesn't carry between fights here, so it's worth it to use something like Lon's upgrade on occasion, even though it doesn't do that much damage. Just because if you don't use up the EXE, then it's wasted anyway.
手が貸せる
That's a perfect unwinnable fight.
Yeah, that's a good like variant of the unwinnable fight where he kills all three in one turn. If he only attacks one character and then you kind of have the other characters behind the first character, he can get stuck on that character and
あなたに
like
私の
keep
相手が務まる
defending
かし
unless you move the
ら
characters
知
closer.
りたいのは
So
誰なの
it's a good thing that he just took care of business that time.
私の番
Although it may also depend on the formation you're using. So another character joins. This time it's Marvelous AQL, but no use for her with the OP
決
CPU.
めさせてもらうわ
So
私の番ね
this time you actually get to be an
でもいける
HDD.
ぜ
There's a little difference that
決
makes.
めさせてもらうねちいつでもいけ決めさせてもらうわね
Now in the later runs, you might occasionally actually care about being an HDD. Here it doesn't make all that much of a difference.
私の番ね
Doesn't matter.
決めさせてもらうわやっと私いつでもいけるぜ
The CPU breaker has a lot of health. You can see that he took a 67,000 EC and still has well over half, and then another 52, and now he's at about half. Yeah, this fight is still free regardless. And that is chapter 5, a rather short chapter, and a pretty easy chapter honestly. At this point you're really just saving for the sake of it because the random spikes of damage that the bosses can do can catch you off guard. Yeah, okay, so now we go from one really short chapter to an even shorter chapter, chapter 6. Unfortunately, chapter 6 features quite a hard boss, despite its otherwise relative brevity. Hard enough that we bother going out of our way to upgrade the armor.
And the last unwinnable fight as well.
Yeah. And quickly swap out Blanche's equipment. She still doesn't need a life ring, but the technique badge will help her when she actually has to do damage in the chapter following this one. And now you view these free cutscenes by the maker characters. They will eventually join, but not quite yet. So for now they're just helping the party by giving us information, which will eventually lead to discovering the one dungeon you actually visit during this chapter. Speaking of the credits, it seems like the run is actually doing pretty well, so we'll probably have time to play the credits on this run. I mean, we also started about 10 to 20 minutes earlier than scheduled, but so far, no full party wipes yet. There aren't that many difficult boss fights left, but there's still opportunity to get randomly nuked. And, oh, there was actually that one chest pickup there, which is sort of important. That's the best weapon you can get for IF in this part of the game, and you actually want IF to be doing a little bit of damage in the boss fights after this chapter because of the party split. And because no jumping star, you have to take the long way around in this dungeon. Of course, it's not worth it to go and find jumping star and get the ingredients for it and implement it, just to save the one small diversion. Thankfully I didn't make jumping star compulsory or anything. That would have been annoying. You only have to use jumping star in Mega Dimension. In fact, I'm not even sure you have to use it once you get it. Although it certainly speeds up things a bit to have it.
And the Freak Diamond?
Yeah.
Or the Jumping Star?
Jumping star.
Oh.
Like talking about it actually being required anywhere. Not sure if it is. Because obviously in Mega Dimension they just hand you jumping stuff for free, but whether you actually need to use it to beat the game at any point I don't know. It does save time to have it though. So now the actual boss looks kind of familiar if you played the other games. They really like to recycle their character models in this series. Really, really, really like.
Not only the character models, dungeon as well.
Yeah, of course. So this is a bit of an annoying boss just because it's so ridiculously hard.
Ah.
It's not overly tanky compared to the one immediately before it, but does a lot of damage even to Blanc. Yeah, finding Jumping Star in Rebirth free is really dumb. Thankfully you don't have to do it in the speedrun, even for true end. So Noir lost a tiny bit of experience there, but that doesn't matter. I said it earlier in the run, but it still applies here. Any one character losing XP from any one boss normally doesn't matter. The one EXP threshold in the game was earlier when Vert got level 25, and you do that entirely through grinding, rather than having to kill certain bosses. Victory hands you Jumping Star, of course, by killing R4 at the end of Chapter 5, but I don't know how easy it is to get the materials that you need for it. That said, you still don't need it in the speedrun, so don't really care. So now the typical NEP party split chapter. I mean, typical as in it happened in Victory, Rebirth Free, and I suppose Mega Dimension in some twisted way as well.
Well, it's the party split, then you join them up in Mega Nap. What am to make yet, I think.
So, if this was the DLC run, we would go to Neptune's story first, because it's actually the easiest in terms of stats and difficulty, but because you're stuck with Neptune, IF, and Compa in the no DLC run, you actually avoid doing Neptunes until last, just because having such a bad party means it's actually more difficult than the others, despite the lower stats on the bosses. So instead you kind of go second hardest, or second easiest, third easiest, hardest, and then the easiest is last. But yeah, so last station is the second easiest. And you also get to use Noir during it, and we just saw how OP Noir can be in those last two chapters, so not a bad thing overall. But this does happen to be the one chapter, or the one part, apart from Neptune's own story, where IF has to be a frontline battler. And IF is not all too effective a frontline battler in general. By this point in the game, she is kind of got the same kind of blast cannon stats as Compa in terms of HP and defenses.
でやられたいの
Thankfully,
誰
Oh, fine. Forgot to keep the
私のターン
got to equip something.
freak diamond. Yes.
私の
お前
番ね
弱い落ちてこい
So I mean that'll just get you more XP drive at this point, and that doesn't hurt.
やっと私の番ね
You'll see IF do 0 to
ネッ
Noir,
トネッ
but
トにしてやんよ
this is kind of the easy form of the fake CPU. Wow, she didn't do 0.
やっと
That is
私の番ね
surprising.
私の
Does die though, what a surprise.
ね私の番ね違う
So this fight, you can carry over the EC you get until the next one.
レベル
It really just ends up being build up the XP almost to max, then use a gauge or use a bar or two of it to kill her, and carry over a couple to the real fake Blackheart boss fight.
I'm running low on life fragments.
How low exactly at this point? I've had runs where I was like under 5 at this point, so you're probably not going to shock me too much.
Oh,
Yeah, that's still not that bad.
なんだろう
Still got 7. Total
Oh,
reviving items.
展開待ってました
やっと私の番ね
actually,
I run.
yeah, I have to reload the game. I forgot to switch my party around.
I mean, you might still be able to win this fight anyway. But if you don't want to try it, then that's fine.
I
I mean, you have
prefer
to
not.
put the title-
I prefer not to.
Yeah. Like, thankfully in these PC ports of Rebirth, you can just return to the title screen without having to close and reopen the game. So yeah. Like,
言っとくけど今の私は
死に
本
たいです私に任せて
やっと私の番ね
私のタ
so yeah, just trying that same fight again, except
ーン
with
私に任せて
different front row
死にたい
members.
のは誰
ネットネットにし覚悟はいい
ね
ネットネットにしてやんよ
And Cyber Connect 2 is a fair bit less glass cannony than
や
待ってました
IF was, and she can also be used without having to set up her combos or anything,
動かない
and still is reasonably effective. This fake Blackheart has about twice the maximum health that the other one did, and also has regen, but it's still pretty much pushover because you get to carry over so much EXE from the previous fight. Cyber Connect 2 died, but that is the last time she actually gets to be in the front line, so her level doesn't matter at all. Guess we'll call that first and last. And IF behind Neptune, of course, will gain a little bit of extra experience for her, which will be more useful when she becomes the main damage dealer in Chapter 8. That console war is remarkably close right now.
Mm.
How did the war change, though?
What?
Oh, I don't know. It's something odd, but whatever.
Oh, console war.
It's like it counts itself or whatever, but yeah, okay, so this next, I think this is actually the fight with the highest stats. Either that or the Vert one is. Vert, yeah, I think Vert's slightly higher, but either
That's-
way,
For me,
I think
it's,
Whiteheart has pretty high stats in general as well. But thankfully, you can buy armor for Blanc, it's finally worth it to buy armor for her. And then you can add this weapon that happens to be sitting around in the dungeon with the boss fight. So Blanc actually gets decently well equipped. And like before, or like in Noir's story, the maker that joins you here, Broccoli, is somewhat useful. Not amazing. Like none of the makers are or stand out all that much in combat, but Broccoli at least has reasonable defenses and health, which make her a good fit for this particular boss.
いつでもいけるぜ。
私のターン。プップパイプップパイ。
And she's got that nice buff which buffs both strength and agility for damage dealing purposes.
私で終わる。
ネップネプに。
私で
プップパイプップパイ。
いつでもいけるぜ。
ネップネプに。ブロッコリー。
いつで
待ってました。
いつでもいけるぜ。
Well, see, real problem with this particular fight is that no one is really all that good at dealing damage.
いつで
You're not dealing with any of the characters that can do debuff,
ブロッコリーの場合、私の
nor have really OP attacks.
私消えちまいな。
And Neptune is still kind of underleveled. She really stays underleveled for most of the game, but
ブロッコリーの場合。
because of the party split, she catches up to the others to some degree.
指示は必要ないわ。
ここで十分。100は単に。待ってました。
いつで消えちまいな。余計な指図は
ブロッコリーの場合。
いつで余計な指図は必要ないわ。
100は単に。
私
See, you can see that once the strength buff is down, you're really not doing that much damage to her at all.
そうだろう。
But
私が
at the same time, this is one of the last points we actually need to think about using life fragments, so not that big a deal if you burn a couple here. And that's it. The game, that's Broccoli's one and only chance to be in the front lines, so her losing experience is completely irrelevant. It was nice that Neptune ended up getting the experience though. She's the most important one to get experience for this point in the game. Now, it's time for Vert. Vert has the hardest boss. Thankfully she also gets the best maker. That said, you have to go into the dungeon first to actually go and pick up the maker before you can menu to set up your party. And Vert actually takes the spot in the back lines this time because her EXE drive is not all that effective against her clone. She doesn't really have access to a good weapon or other gear at this point in the game, and so you build a team which just goes pure physical instead. And the fact that Vert gives cooldown reduction as a
なんだろうこれ。
passive skill to her partner, it actually ends up being more useful than having her in the team itself. So Tekken gets to take more turns. with as her partner. There's a weapon for Compa there, but we don't use Compa in the front lines anymore, despite
準備を
私の
the
番ね
lack of party members at this point in the game.
ねっぷねぷにしてやんよ私
There are too many enemies with really high magic defense.
私に任せなさい私の番だね
これ以上
でやられたいの誰待ってました
Oh,
すいません
私の番だね
覚悟
Tekken's got some nice buffs. She buffed her in HDN luck, which means she takes less critical hits. And also gets hit less in theory.
私の番だね
And Neptune can buff her strength for her.
これ以
私の番ね私の相手
これ以
She
ね
got
っぷね
skill
ぷにして
steal as
やんよ
well, obviously. That's a lot.
yeah, I realized
But
that.
that's why you buy reflex.
私の番でやられたいの誰
And she also heals a ton of health whenever you use a big healing item on
こ
her.
れ以上終わりですわ
Because of her 10,000 maximum health.
私の番
And the other two are just EXE gauge builders at this point.
準備を
And also bait.
で
準備を
私の番だね待ってましたでやられたい
Still nice to have Neptune up at the end of the fight if possible.
私の番
Though Fake Green can deal a ton of damage in one turn. So it's not all that easy to do. But yeah, okay. She's down.
With
IF losing experience is still as irrelevant as ever. And luckily Neptune has got all the experience so far in this chapter, so her level isn't going to be too terrible for when we actually need her damage. You're out of other options though, it's time for Neptune's chapter, where you don't get any other CPUs to help you. And the makers you get are actually kind of bad. Well, it's not to say they're not worth using, but they need their combo set up to actually be good. And their stats are pretty low. Mainly because these bosses' stats are also lower than the others,
私に任せて
probably, but
私の番私に任せ
that
なさい
doesn't particularly help when you have the worst party that you do,
私の番
or out of any of these stories for this
決め
point.
さ
でやら待ってます
私の
私の番だ私の番
決めさ
私の
But yeah, just like Blackheart,
言わないよ
or just like the last station story, we
ねっぷね
have a deal, or we have a fight with one
私
which
に
has
任せなさい
only
私の
half the
番ね
normal health to
私
begin
に
with,
任せなさい私
where you build up the XE gauge. Except in this one, you do it to an even more ridiculous level than you did before.
レベル
Like you try and get it all the way to pretty much EXE4. Of course, you use an EXE to finish her off, so you end up with only 3, but... Or, well, probably quite close to 4, because it needed a little more after the EXE, but... You won't have quite exactly 4 usually. And then one more revival item on the ground. That should set. That should have you set for the rest of the game though.
yeah,
Next you
should
get
be.
weapon. It would be nice to have that weapon earlier for the other boss battles, but it's still not all that big of an upgrade, and you really just don't want to deal with this story first. When you have a level 30 party,
たまには本気出さないとね
相手は誰
私の番だね
Neptune and IF are just too weak and the makers aren't all
やられ
that
た
much
いの
better.
誰
It doesn't help that the two makers that join you here are mages and marvelous who have lower levels because they join you earlier in the story as well.
私
私に任せなさい
So Falcom is the highest level you have, and she's still only 51.
私に任せて
Whereas Tekken is all the way up at 60.
私の番ね
決めさ
私に任
私の
負けるつもりはな待
And yeah, just
で
Falcom is the main damage dealer
負け
here,
るつも
but
りはないよ
it's also not all that bad to use Neptune's EXE here either, because she has caught up in damage quite a bit by this point. You can see that there's like 30k coming out of Neptune and well that last one it was higher, but it was like 30k at Neptune and 40 to 50 from Falcon. But yeah, with the 4 EXEs that fight is not too bad. And after a couple more cutscenes, the party will completely reunite, and now you have a really, really OP team all of a sudden. Chapter 7's beginning is a bit of struggle street, but now that everyone has grinded up a bit and you get the CPUs back in general, it's just the rest of the game goes by pretty smoothly most of the time. So it's the return of Noir and Blanc for the reasons that we used them before. Also the fact that they just got really OP weapon upgrades as well. Neptune is going to get an even more OP one at the end of this chapter, but she doesn't have it quite yet,
覚悟は
so
できてるか
Noir will still deal the bulk of the damage for these next couple of boss fights.
私で終わりにしてやるぜ
私のタ
Now, again, this is Momus gain twice. Still does quite a bit of damage. You have slightly more health to begin with though.
いつでもい
So overall it's nowhere near as bad as the chapter 6 fight with it.
ーン私のタ
But you might see one character die if he doesn't bother healing. And that's just normal and not a big deal. Looks like no death in the first fight though.
あなたに私の相手が務まると
So Momus 1 is fine. Momus 2,
死にたいのは誰
I'd say it's slightly harder, even though Neptune gets a
決
CPU
めさせ
upgrade,
てもらうわ
because like I said, Neptune doesn't really deal that much damage until she gets her weapon, and that weapon doesn't come until the final chapter.
ね死にたいのは誰私で終わりに
So
してやる
it's all on Noir here, and the Momus' stats are slightly higher still.
私で終わ相手は誰私で
Noir took a pretty heavy
私
hit.
の番ね
Worth healing her, I suppose, just make sure she
で
doesn't.
もいけるぜ私の番ね
Because of that main DPS roll.
せいで
Knife hit from behind And you'll notice also that it might have already happened a couple of times in this run, but he takes virus status and doesn't de-transform because the force CPU status in boss fights in this game is so powerful that it's more powerful than virus. They didn't actually get rid of that until V2. Although Mark II in general didn't have any force CPU pedals at all really, apart from like 1 or 2. So story for a bit, and then the final boss battle. Or battles as it is. As usual for a net game, the final boss has more than one form even in normal ending. Well, I suppose there are some other games that only have multiple faces on the true ending, but this one you get multiple phases regardless of ending. Yeah, final menu, just give Neptune a really OP weapon. Don't forget to I don't think you forget to give Neptune a really OP weapon.
And just missed a bit.
But yeah,
That's fine.
now Neptune has the highest attack power, and she also has Falcon behind her that gives her Ignore category as a trait. So now she's as good at DPS as Noir is, really. Well, I mean, Noir is still better to lead off with because she can debuff the enemy's defenses, but once the defense is already debuffed, Neptune is dealing more damage than Noir is. And this rainbow dungeon that you don't actually see anywhere else apart from Net U, as far as I remember. They use it a ton in Net U, but I think this is the only like turn-based RPG appearance of it. Will eventually lead to the final boss.
このブラックハートが直々に相手をしてあげるわ。相手は誰？
And a relatively easy fight, but it does have a ton of health on the second phase.
ね？死にたいのは誰なの？貴様に私で終わりにしてやるぜ。決めさせてもらうわ。私の番ね。
But first phase ends up being like all the other first phases in this kind of deal. It's
やっと私の番ね。相手は誰？死にゆけ。私で終わりにして。
use it to build EXE, and I think you just got a little surprise there because Noir normally moves before Neptune. I might be wrong though.
Yeah.
Neptune first.
Yeah, it was Neptune first. I don't know why.
But anyway, just build up the gauge. You can be somewhat lackadaisical with your health because normally all your characters will level up after this boss battle. It still gives decent amounts of experience despite only being the first phase. So carry in 3 EXE plus whatever you got back from the Infinite Slash. And hopefully full health and SP, not that you need the SP too much. And then go into the HP sponge, which is Dragon Arthur. Also for Z-Fresh, timing is coming up on the final hit, which won't be too long away.
I'm here to say time.
Yeah, I'll say time, but it'll probably be quite delayed. That's okay.
Time.
2:03:54 without.
I think that's the TV. Oh,
It is on speedrun.com. I don't know if you submitted your message.
I can't about the game. Let me see.
But yeah, play the animation of the final EXE, because why not?
GG Chfou.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's Rebirth 1, huh? May as well
Roll the
take it to the
credits.
credits.
There's a lot of ending cutscene.
マジコンノとの戦い
The credits might get a bit louder than the rest of the game audio, so just be ready for that on the viewer side. I think the movie's normally a little louder than the rest of the game for this game.
Should be fine. I lowered the volume of them. Wait a bit.
I mean, it'll be okay regardless because the rest of the volume hasn't been that high. Either way, well done.
Up. I think I skipped the credits because I thought it was a cutscene. Yes,
okay.
looks like it. Yes, it is.
Yeah, you skipped it. Oh well.
Ah, my bad. Or we can do the fight again, or not. But no,
You
that's
almost
just
couldn't this
the
time.
opening cutscene. I thought it was another round of cutscene before the ending.
Well, that's that. That's, you got the
That's-
PV or whatever.
Yeah.
You might have to retime that to be sure about the extra time, but I mean, Z-Fresh
It'll be
got it
retimed.
relative.
I think I still do better than that, so I'm not. It's still a PB,
Yeah.
by 4 minutes.
So we have almost an hour until the next run is due to start. That's how crazy this got in terms of starting early and being underestimate.
Got a really high estimate in case.
Yeah, this game can troll, it can crash. Mainly troll for this one. The crashes aren't too common.
I haven't done New Game Plus, but I think it's you could just start the game. The enemies doesn't get their stat increased, right? In New Game Plus,
What do you mean?
like when you start a New Game Plus,
Well, no.
you keep your gear and levels,
Yeah.
but the enemy don't. Like they start
Yeah,
from
the
level 1.
enemies
Yeah,
are
okay.
still really weak.
I think I'm gonna just.
I mean, hold on, I could... We've got so much time that even the other idea I had isn't going to
Like doing a
necessarily schedule. But do you have anything else to show for Rebirth 1, or should we pass over to an intermission?
I have nothing else to show. Actually.
Alright, I guess we'll have Z-Fresh pass over to an intermission screen.
Hmm.
Alright, guys.